Okay, time to take a look at what's grabbing headlines here in France. And Florence Villeminot joins me now in the studio. Good morning, Flo. And we're going to start with Le Parisien. It's focusing on French citizens fighting with the Islamic State group in Syria and Iraq. Authorities are concerned about a massive wave of returns of these French jihadists back on French soil.
That's right. It's kind of the flip side of all the victories of the coalition fighting against the Islamic State group in Iraq and Syria. Let's take a look inside Le Parisien. You can see they're talking about this threat of this massive return because as ISIS is suffering these major military setbacks in its so-called caliphate, well, a lot of the jihadists fighting alongside are tempted to go back to their home countries. And France is particularly concerned by this phenomenon. Le Parisien reports that the latest figures, about 680 French citizens are reportedly fighting alongside the Islamic State group. And so many of them, you can see here, have become real killing machines, sometimes spending up to years fighting alongside the Islamic State group. Le Parisien reports that some French citizens are quite high up in the echelons in the so-called Islamic State group. And so Le Parisien is very concerned with this today and calls for rigor when it comes to dealing with their return, and also, and this is very important, international cooperation.
Well, some very scary figures there. Well, it's in this tense climate that the burkini scandal has erupted. It's the full-body swimsuit worn by Muslim women. It's been banned in several French beach resort towns, including Cannes. Critics of the burkini say it's a sign of radicalisation.
That's right. You could read more about that in Le Parisien, which reports that several women have already been fined for wearing burkinis. Now, what's interesting is how much of a debate this is in France and where people are falling alongside this debate.
Interesting, that's the word.
That's right. Several
very diplomatic of you.
Exactly. Now, several top officials are backing these very localized burkini bans. Among them, the Prime Minister, Manuel Valls. He gave an interview to a local paper, La Province, and you can read more about that interview in Le Parisien. And this quotes what he said. He says that beaches, as all public space, should be protected from religious demands. The burkini is not a new line of bathing suits. It's not a fashion statement. According to Manuel Valls, the burkini represents a political project that goes against our society, a project that's founded on the enslavement of women. So a very controversial position there.
Okay. Well, many other papers beg to differ, including the left-leaning newspaper Libération.
That's right. Libération really takes a look behind the scenes of the burkini ban. If you want to take a look at all the sides of the debate, definitely check out Libération. And Libération is skeptical, says, okay, look, the burkini might be a symbol of a very rigorous interpretation of sacred texts, but is that enough to justify banning the burkini? According to Libération in its editorial today, the ban actually creates special legislation that is discriminatory against a category of citizens that are accused of essentially a crime of opinion. They're punished in advance for potential problems that they haven't created yet. And Libération says that banning people who want to ban the burkini essentially prefer immediate injustice to hypothetical public disorder.
Well, Slate, meanwhile, wonders whether we should even be having this debate at all, accusing French authorities of getting their priorities all mixed up.
That's right. Aren't there more important things that we should be talking about? That's essentially what Slate says. And I like their headline today. It says that the road to hell is paved with burkinis instead of good intentions, of course. Now, Slate thinks this whole burkini debate is completely ridiculous. Essentially, we're talking about swimwear here. Let's not forget that that's what all this is about.
Right.
And it has a message for politicians who are, making this such a fiery debate, and says that all this is doing is really validating the far-right National Front and their very divisive policies of us against them. Now, it's interesting because if we take a look at the right opposition, Les Républicains party, Nicolas Sarkozy from that party has not weighed in on the burkini ban yet, but he certainly is accused of going more and more towards the far right and trying to fish for votes. And this is a great cartoon in Libération today by Willem, where you can see him actually holding Marine Le Pen, the leader of the National Front Party. He's holding her up and saying, quick, give me your ideas, so perhaps he could win the presidential election.
That's cheeky. Well, let's end with a word on the Olympics, the Rio Games. Team France suffering a string of defeats since the beginning.
That's right, and it seems like the only medal that Team France is good at winning winning is the medal for the slip of the tongue. That's what Le Parisien says, because several French athletes have drawn a lot of criticism for comments that they've made during the games, particularly comments they made after losing. They've been accused of poor sportsmanship. The latest to have made such a controversial comment is the pole vaulter Renaud Lavillenie. Now he's quite famous here in France. He was hoping to win his second gold medal.
Hold on to the Olympic title.
That's right. He lost.
Yeah.
And he blamed actually the fans in Rio who were booing him. He said that the last time an athlete had been booed like that was when the black runner Jesse Owens was booed during the 1936 Nazi games, and he drew a lot of criticism. He apologized for that statement, but that mea culpa isn't enough for a lot of people. L'Opinion, in fact, has been very critical of French athletes for essentially making excuses for themselves. And the editorial of L'Opinion today, they talk about a culture of excuses, in fact, saying that the French team athletes are basically blaming everyone, the fans, the other players, essentially anybody. It's not my fault. And L'Opinion says this is a bad reflection of France because, after all, the whole world is watching Team France, so they should know better, essentially.
Oh dear, oh dear. Well, aside from that, hopefully they can grab some more medals. Thanks very much for that, Flo.